The Pope had some business in a town which was close to Rome. It was too close to go in a plane. So they got the Pope-mobile out, and he was in that. And while they were out in the country, he tapped on the driver's compartment and said, I'd really like to drive for a while. I've always wanted to drive a big car like this. And the driver said, no, sir, I don't think we better do that. He says, but please, ever since I was a boy, I've just had the ambition to drive a car like this. So finally they exchange seats, and the driver goes back into the Pope's compartment. Well, the Pope is very excited, and he begins to step on the gas and gets up to 70, 80, 90 miles an hour. And pretty soon there's a siren behind him and squad car. Well, he pulls over, and the officer gets out of the car, and he's walking up to the car, and he sees the Pope. And he stops, and he turns around, and he goes back and gets on his radio. And he says, Sarge, you got to help me with this one. This is a biggie. The sergeant says, well, is it a senator? Oh, no, Sarge, it's bigger than that. With the president? No, Sarge, even bigger than that. He says, well, who is it? He says, Sarge, I don't know who it is, but he's got the Pope for his driver.
There was a gentleman that went into the barber shop and sat down in a barber chair, and the barber says, well, he says, hello, Stash. He says, how are you? He says, oh, good. He says, yeah, Stash says, I'm going on a vacation. The barber says, you're going on a vacation? Yeah. He says, where are you going? Well, first we're going to England. The barber says, you can't go to England. He says, it's raining and it's misty all the time. Stash says, well, my arrangements are made, I'm going. The barber says, where are you going then? He says, well, he said, then we're going where that leaning tower is. He said, you know that big leaning tower? Barber says, you can't go there now. He said, it's slippery, it's wet. You're going to fall down. Stash says, the arrangements are made, we're going. He said, well, where are you going then? He said, then I'm going to go see the Pope. The barber started laughing. He said, see the Pope? He says, he only sees dignitaries, kings, queens, presidents. You? He says, look, the arrangements are made, we're going. So he went. The barber says goodbye, and he left. 3 weeks later, he comes back. He sits down in a barber chair, and the barber says, well, how was your vacation, Stash? He said, we were in England. He says, it didn't rain. It was beautiful. The barber says, you got to be kidding me. Yeah, it's beautiful. The barber says, well, he said, did you go see that leaning tower? Yeah, he said, we went all the way to the top. He said, it wasn't slippery. Barber says, you gotta be kidding me. And he's cutting his hair, and finally he says, well, he said, did you get to see the Pope? Yep. He says, there we were in the audience. Barber said, no kidding. He said, yeah. He said, the Pope finished saying his prayers. He said, then he comes down the aisle and he stops right by me. And the barber says, no kidding. He says, yeah. He said, he stopped and he whispered in my ear. Barber said, he whispered in your ear. He said, what did he say? He said, he wanted to know who gave me such a lousy haircut.
Okay, there was this girl decided to join a monastery, become a nun, and she joined an order that was, you weren't allowed to speak. I remember what it's called. She had to take a vow of silence.
A nunnery.
She had to take a vow of silence, okay? And you were only allowed to speak 2 words a year. So after she'd been there for a year, the Mother Superior came and asked her how she liked it so far, and she said, cold room. And so that was it for the year. And she stayed another year, and the Mother Superior came to her again and asked her how she liked it at that point, and she said, bad food. So she stayed on another year, and they came to her a 3rd time to ask her how she felt about the place so far. And she said, I quit. And the Mother Superior said, well, sister, I can't say that I'm surprised because all you've done since you've been here is bitch, bitch, bitch.
Okay, there were 2 truck drivers coming into a town, and one said, oh, we're coming into Elvira. He says, no, this is Elvira. He says, no, it's Elvira. And he says, well, when we get to someplace, we'll ask somebody. So they get out of the truck and they go in and they ask the first waitress that comes by. He says, what's the name of this place? But say it slowly so that we can really get it. And she looks at him and she says, Dairy Queen.
This teacher asked her students if they could make a sentence with the word fascinate. And the first hand went up, and it was little Mary, and she said, I have a sentence. She said, okay, Mary, what's your sentence? She said, well, she said, my family and I, we went to the zoo this weekend, and it was so fascinating seeing all the animals. And the teacher said, well, that was a really good sentence, Mary, but that's not the word fascinate. So next is Susie. Susie's got her hand just rolling away, and she said, well, okay, Susie, what is your sentence? Well, she said, my dad took me out to a farm, and she said, I was so fascinated by the way the farm equipment ran, she said. And the teacher said, well, that was a good sentence, but she said, unfortunately, you didn't use the word fascinate. So now Johnny's in the back of the room waving his hand, and the teacher's thinking, well, he can't do anything bad with this, fascinate. So he said, Johnny, okay, tell me your sentence. And he said, well, he said, my Aunt June has a sweater with 10 buttons on it, but her boobs are so big she can only fascinate.
That almost. That's a good one.